So obviously we're all fighting. And this is when we see Zaden, I feel like, really lose it for the first time. Violet's sort of seen it a little bit, but this is the first time when he looks her in the eyes and she specifically says that it's like looking into the eyes of Dune, which is what we got in the previous book. That was a mention. It just seems odd, like mentioned so specifically that it's Dune. Because if he, first of all, I don't think she said anything like that about other venin. And then also, like, why would looking at a venin's eyes be like looking at the eyes of Dune? Because the eyes are turning red. And then maybe it's just a way for us to understand like how fearsome he is in that moment, like how it's kind of scary to look him in the eyes, how he seems more supernatural and less human. But because of how many times she said it's like looking at Dune, it's just like interesting to wonder what type of connection there could be between Zaden and Dune. Like, Zaden is already a good fighter, so it's not weird for him to have some sort of connection to the god of war. But when he, like, says he's like, I'm gonna kill them all, and then all these people die, like, very scary. Also, he shouldn't have done that because he pulled way too much power, which means that right away, his eyes are gonna be more red, and it's gonna be more obvious, because most of the time you can kind of keep it under control. Conceal, don't feel, and nobody notices. But with this, like, Violet's like, okay, now you have to let me handle it, because if you turn and even look at our friends, they're gonna know what happened. And so he has to, like, pretend like he's really sad about what he's just done and, like, destroyed inside. And then to get out of this situation, Violet's gonna have to bargain. She says something along the lines of, like, we have, you know, more power than you in this situation. And she's like, because I have this dragon. And Andarna shows up with one of the leopards, like, in her mouth like a little baby kitten. And Violet specifically notes that Andarna is, like, holding her mouth back in a way that she doesn't get slobber on the leopard. She's like, how thoughtful. So they get out of that one and they're on to the next. And one of my favorite things that Violet, she's having to listen to her dragons, obviously, talking about the things that Andarna's saying, and she's talking about Tairn, and she was like, hearing about how Tairn is the worst, period, mentor, period, ever, period. I love Andarna and Tairn's relationship because we know how highly Andarna thinks of Tairn. The reason she was basically charading as a black dragon for so long was because she wanted to be like him. I put after that, this is gonna hurt when he dies. I really do think we're not gonna get him this. I don't think he's getting out unscathed of this one. I also put, someone get this girl an ibuprofen and an energy drink. Yeah, Violet is having consistent, intense headaches, and she feels like she's gonna pass out. I'm sure it's a little bit more than her just like having a migraine, but an ibuprofen and an energy drink is how I handle most intense headaches, so that's what I wanted her to have. And I'm just wondering what this means, because yes, we have had issues with her, you know, like her body with the joints. She has the like fantasy version of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but my understanding of it is that it's more of like a joint and ligament thing. So I'm wondering, can that also give you these extreme headaches? Can it make you feel weak? Can it make you feel like you're going to pass out? Because that's what Violet's experiencing consistently throughout the entire book. And this book spans like weeks and weeks, I think months. And so for her to have that happening over and over again on a regular basis is just very concerning. Also, we have Sloane in this book, so that's Liam's younger sister, who at the end of Iron Flame, she was sort of the channel that took all of the power out of Lilith Sorrengail. It's the reason she died, to imbue it into the stone. And so now I think Sloane is like experiencing PTSD from that. Like, she won't use her signet, which is very bad, because at some point, don't they explode if they don't use their powers? So Auric reveals himself to Holden. I can't remember what they thought happened to Auric, if he had like died or ran away or whatever it was, but his family, like the royals, didn't know that he was in the Riders Quadrant, because Auric isn't his real name. It's like Cameron, something of that nature. But Holden has done enough as our royal representative at the last island. So as we go to this new one, I think we just decide to send Holden home. Not really sure. But Auric is like, I can go as the royal representative and I won't blow it, because he's more of a rider, a little more responsible, and definitely less pompous. I feel like Holden, he just, I think, expects the red carpet rolled out for him at every single second of every single day. Mira isn't talking to us, which is really annoying. So at one of the islands, we end up finding these books that her dad left for Violet there, because he had went to study there or something like that. And Mira is a little upset, which I feel like is understandable to an extent, because like it's clear that Violet and her dad had a very close relationship in a way that Mira and their dad did not. So for her and Violet to go off on this quest, and for her dad to have left Violet all these books and stuff like that, and to have not left Mira anything, I can understand where Mira's coming from. But at the same time, I don't trust that girl, really. At this point in the book, I definitely didn't. I have been waiting this whole time for Mira to betray us to someone. Later, when she finds out that Zaden is venin, and Zaden can immediately tell with his power that she does not have any intention of telling people about it, even though she's pissed that Zaden is a venin and nobody told her. So by the end of the book, I feel like I trusted Mira a lot more, but for a significant portion, I was waiting for her to, like, go off and tell someone that Zaden was venin, or to, like, turn on Violet, or to turn on the rebellion, something to go wrong there. That's so funny. So we're in one of these islands where, like, they don't, like, their main language is not the common language, and so Dane is there ready to help with his little dictionary, and they're like, we speak the common tongue. And he just throws the dictionary away. He's like, love wasting my time. Also, on this other island that we visit, everyone has silver hair. And we see a little girl specifically who looks exactly like Violet. The brown hair that fades to the silver at the bottom of the braid. And I'm like, what does this mean? Like, is this where Violet was born? Like, I don't understand how else Violet could have gotten that, because I feel like at this point, it seems confirmed that her parents are her parents. You know, like, it wasn't like she has a dad that she doesn't know is her dad, and she just had never been told that her father wasn't actually her biological dad. Like, I don't feel like that's coming for us. So it's very confusing that we meet these people so far away that seem like her, but there's no tie directly to them. By the way, each of these islands we go to, we have to go through some sort of task, and one of them is fighting, and it's Zaden and Dane and Violet against 3 of the people on one of the islands. I honestly didn't keep track of all the different places they went to. In my opinion, they just went island hopping to try and find the 7th dragon, and that was really how I understood the task overall. And Violet, obviously everybody's gonna underestimate Violet. She's like 5 foot, absolutely nothing. And then we're fighting, and she's trying to be like, this is just like the practice mats, like, do what you remember. And then she hears, like, Dane is unconscious. And I'm like, of course Dane is unconscious. like, I get it. He has earned his way through the Dragon Rider ranks, despite his dad it wasn't like a Nepo baby situation. Like, he did earn his place. But at the same time, I'm like, he just doesn't seem quite as, like, scrappy as Zaden and Violet are in their fighting styles. We find out that the queen, like, who ordered this fight situation, first of all, Violet was fighting the queen, which we didn't realize, but the queen is like, yeah, I'm not going to give information to somebody who has not beat me personally. And I was like, respect, but at the same time, like, that's kind of crazy that you would let your queen go to fight in a potentially lethal battle, but okay. And then she tells Violet that she wants dragon eggs because she thinks that if they just have dragons around, that they will be able to become dragon riders. And I forget if it was Zaden or Dane who was talking, like, after that, and was like, you know, if you want to become a dragon rider, we'll see you in the spring at the parapet. That is the only way you can do it. Obviously not the answer that lady wanted. Next location, Zaden's mom. We meet her, finally. She's queen of some land. And I truly thought that this woman was going to be either a rebellion leader or a venin herself. Like, potentially a maven. Like, that level of venin. And she's just some random lady. She seems, well, at first, she seems nice. Like, I was like, sorry, girl, I thought you were going to be the villain in this story, but you seem okay. Like, it sounds like she was really... She even tells Zaden, like, I was so young when I had you, I didn't know what to do. We find out she basically, like, she should not have fled and left Zaden with his dad the way that she did. But she also knew that she was going to get killed and that Zaden probably wouldn't. It was just, like, a really uncomfortable situation, because I totally understand why Zaden's mad at her. And then, like, for Zaden to see these 2 little kids running around and to realize, like, those are his mom's kids. Like, they're 10 and 11. He's, 20 whatever. And that he has these little brothers, and that his mom has built this entirely new life away from him. That sucked. And then Violet's talking to Zaden's mom, and she's like, I'll try to get him to come to dinner. Like, I'll try to get him to talk to you. And later we realize why she's being so nice and why she gave the queen this tea and stuff like that. But then we sit down to eat. And it's like all of a sudden, Xaden's mom and stepdad, I guess, feel entitled to like deciding things about his life. It was wild. A wild family dinner. We have our whole crew there, and then Xaden's there, obviously. And his mom and stepdad are like, yeah, you should definitely do a contract marriage. Like, you're going to be the Duke of Tairn. We need to find you a royal. And they're like, oh, what about Kat? And I'm like, not Kat. And they're like, oh, it only needs to be for a few years. And Zaden is like, I have given up everything. This is like the one thing I will not be giving up is Violet. I was like, thank goodness we're not headed down this path, because that could have been so annoying so fast as a subplot. He's like, if I'm going to be marrying anybody, it's going to be Violet. So we can plan that right now. I will marry her right now if that's what you want. And I thought we were going to get married for a second. And then Garrick in the background is like, Violet, are you going to take his last name? Or like, do you want to hyphenate? Or like... We bring out the chocolate cake. His mom, I do to an extent. I felt bad for her. Like, she feels so guilty about, like, leaving Zaden and stuff like that. And she's like, we tried 4 different chocolate cake recipes. This is the closest one that I could find to what you used to like. They bring out this dessert and stuff like that. And then Violet, brilliantly, I would have never caught this. Maybe I'm just, like, a naive child, because she looks at placement settings. She's like, why are we the only ones with forks? And the king snaps at one of the servants like, why don't we have forks? Go get forks. And Violet somehow in her mind puts together that was on purpose, and that the king, like, he is basically stalling all of his people to eat the cake so that she and her friends will start eating the cake before they can get the forks, because there's poison in the cake. And I think the mom did not know about this at all. And then, of course, Garrick has already eaten some of it, and he, like, just passes out, basically almost dead. And then Violet is like, oh, good thing I also poisoned you. And I was like, oh, I love it. And so she had put in the tea that she gave to all of them some sort of poison situation. And she's like, actually, in a couple minutes, you're going to start throwing up blood and die unless I give you the antidote. And obviously that was something she had done for some other piece of information, but now she's like, now I just need you to tell me, like, how to handle Garrick and have him not die. That king is so annoying. He's like, I would literally rather die than tell you this information. I was like, okay, whatever, like, you're gonna let even Zaden's mom die and all these other people die. He was just, like, willing to go out, I guess. So we have to go track down the antidote, which luckily Violet is like a poison master. She starts sniffing the cake, and I was like, oh, it's like those moments that I just love so much in, like, The Mentalist and stuff like that, where they just, like, Sherlock Holmes the situation. And she doesn't fully know what's going on, but she ends up in the kitchen and she sees, you know, like the color of the poison on the cook's hands and stuff, and starts piecing it together. And when that knife got thrown at Ridoc, because the chef threw the knife and it's like, it looks like it's in Riddick's side, I was actually so sad. And then it turns out it was just, like, kind of stuck in his jacket, and he's the only reason he looks so, like, distraught is because he hates sewing. I thought that was really funny. We end up making the antidote and saving Garrick. And did she end up giving, I feel like she ended up giving the antidote to Zaden's mom and stuff. I think I skimmed by that part because I was just, like, so relieved about Ridoc not dying. Next island, we don't have to overcome poison or fighting people. No, we have to be given gifts to, like, play a game. And, like, because this island, their specific god that they worship the most is, like, the god of luck. And so they are getting all of these random gifts. I forgot what Violet got. Somebody got a kitten and they named it Broccoli because they're like, maybe it's not what you want, but it's what you need. That was really cute. Someone just kisses Garrick. That was funny. And then Traeger goes and gets his gift and he gets killed, which sucked. I feel like I didn't really register Traeger up until right beforehand when we, like, look down from the balcony and we see Kat and Traeger talking and, like, flirting and, like, they're a thing now. This is why I feel bad for Kat, because, like, at the beginning of the book, I did not like her. And now I feel absolutely horrible for this girl. And then, you know, his griffin, like, shortly follows, and that was just, like, it's brutal. I thought for a while that Kat was gonna blame Violet for that happening, but it turns out that Kat just kind of blames herself because she sort of convinced Traeger to come with her on this mission. We fall asleep on the beach after this whole ordeal, and we wake up and the 7th dragon type is just there. There's like 6 of them. And it's so cool because they fly in and they're like sky blue from the sky, and then like when they go off to have their little personal chat, they go into the water and they turn into like that darker blue color. And it's just like, it's really cool like seeing them. Andarna giving story time was the cutest, and it's so funny because Violet's like, oh, how long is this going to take? And then Andarna's like, it all started when I was in my egg. And she goes off and tells them this whole story of like her hatching and how she grew up, and like her deciding to choose Violet at threshing. And I kind of understood where these dragons were coming from. They turned to Violet and they're like, you let a baby choose you? And like, in all fairness, Violet didn't really know, and also, like, humans don't make the rules over there. Like, they follow what the dragons say, even the baby dragons, especially with Andarna. She's the only one of her den there. It wasn't like anybody was there to veto her decision to bond so early. But it is the reason that her wing is messed up and she didn't get to stay in the dreamless sleep and fully develop. And so those dragons sort of blame Violet for that. And so they refused to come back with, like, that was the whole point, was to bring back this 7th species of dragon because we think that they know how to get rid of the venin. And now they're not going to go. And even when we asked them, like, how to cure the venin and stuff like that, they're like, there's just no cure. Sorry. So that sucked. And, like, the nail in the coffin in that situation was them seeing Zaden arrive onto the beach, and they immediately peg him for a venin. And Ridoc is there, and he didn't know that Zaden was a venin. So later, he and Violet have it out. And he's like, okay, sure, your boyfriend's a venin. What is the point? What's the line that you're going to kill him, or you're going to let somebody else kill him? Because that's going to probably need to happen at some point. And she says, like, you know, if he hurts me, then that means he's not himself anymore. The venin is taken over, and that's my line. And so Riddick's like, okay, I'm going to hold you to that, and I just have a feeling we're going to get there. Meanwhile, we're getting these, like, random messages in dreams and stuff with Theophany? But she's like stalking us, basically. Griffin Queen is dead, by the way. We also, Ridoc sort of made a rule, if I am going to keep your secret about Zaden, I will not be the only one keeping it. You are going to tell our friends. We have to have a little family meeting with Jesinia and Rhiannon and the squad to let them know about Zaden being a venin. So that also kind of, like, I'm glad people know. I don't like keeping secrets from Rhiannon specifically. And then, like, right after, a new little first year gets shadow power, and it hurts so much. So Zaden he's so sweet. He's sitting there and he's like walking the kid through this. He's like, you are not going to die from experiencing these shadows for the first time, and like kind of gets him through it. But at the same time, you're not supposed, like, someone else is not supposed to have your signet, right? Or at least if it's like a rare one like that, it's only like a once in a generation situation. And so now that a new writer has it, it's almost like Zaden has been discarded as an option for that power. Like, the magic knows that Zaden is not human anymore. He's not going to be around that much longer. And so it's given that power to a new person. And that really sucked, because it's really easy when you're reading it and Zaden is still himself to really think like, this is not a big deal. Like, he's venin, we're going to get through it. But then when stuff like this happens, and it's almost like the universe confirming that there's a problem here. Turns out, though, Brennan also knew about Zaden, and they'd been working together. And it was such a hopeful, wonderful moment when Brennan is telling Violet about him and Zaden, like, trying to do this, and, like, a new letter from Zaden asking, like, can we, you know, try this option? Can we try this option? And all these things that he's trying, and Violet is so happy, and he's like, why? And she's like, because he's still trying. Like, to us, from Violet's perspective, I think he was just trying not to get her hopes up, because it seemed almost as if Zaden had just, like, accepted this as his fate. Whereas now that we know that he's trying all these different options, like, he hasn't fully given up on his ability to heal from being a venin. And it almost seems like Zaden is doing at least a little bit better, at least controlling it if he's not healing, because Brennan's like, we've tried kind of everything. We find out, finally, Violet's second signet. She is a dream walker, which would make sense because she's been having these dreams. And I'm so proud of some of the fandom. Like, they figured this out because they were talking about these dreams that she was having of the venin being like, we want you, like, come with us. And they were like, it seems like this isn't actually Violet's dream. It seems like this is Zaden's dream. And it was. She's been inside of his dreams. And then also the one about the portrait where she had this dream where, like, the portrait and her house was burning down and she's talking to Kat and stuff like that. Apparently that was one of Marin's dreams. So she accidentally went into someone else's dream. And I'm like, how many people's dreams are we going to end up going into? Because this could get interesting really fast. And then Zaden's like, Fun fact, you can't tell anyone about this because being a dreamwalker is a form of being an intrinsic, which is like mind reader. Reminder that Zaden is also a form of intrinsic, where he can understand people's motivations. He can't necessarily hear the words in their head. But both of those warrant death sentences, so we're not allowed to talk to anybody about that. Also, Andarna knew. I was almost impressed. So obviously, like when we first had the lightning stuff, Tairn couldn't tell her what her signet was. And also, like it seems like it's sort of on the writer as well. It's like what they need is what they'll take. But Andarna knew about this and she knew what it was and she didn't say anything. And I was like, I'm honestly impressed that Andarna kept a secret. I feel like that girl could not keep a secret for her life, so I'm shocked she was able to keep it from Violet. But it seems like she was sort of following Tairn's lead. She's like, well, Tairn, you didn't tell her what her signet was from you, so I didn't tell her what her signet was from me. And I'm like, Andarna, that's the cutest, but you should have told us this because it could accidentally get us killed. And the reason that she is a dreamwalker is because she needed power and information from Andarna while she was in the dreamless sleep that the dragons have when they're growing. And so that has now translated to human. And so it's a cool power. I'm interested in how it's going to change the course of the story, I guess, because unless people are having prophetic dreams or dreams about situations that have already happened and like they weren't willing to give up that information, but Violet can pull it out of their dreams. Because like most of the time, I feel like dreams don't, like they don't make sense or they don't necessarily mean anything unless maybe in this universe all dreams mean something, which could definitely be the truth. But I'm interested to see like how impactful that is moving forward. We find out that Theophany was a priestess of Dune, which is like kind of, you know, another connection potentially between the venin and Dune. And I'm wondering, like, when people pull from the earth, like, is that a Dune-like thing to do? Like, why do we keep getting mentions of her throughout this entire book, like, so heavily? Because also we find out that Violet, like, Mira tells us that Violet was, dedicated to Dune, which I'm wondering, is that why? Well, outside of not wanting her to be a scribe and figure everything out and get killed for her knowledge, did her mom force her to be a writer because she had been dedicated to Dune, and Dune would definitely be a writer person as opposed to a scribe person. But I feel like there's so much mention of it that I feel like in the next 2 books, we're gonna have to see demigods or gods come to earth or something like that, or we're gonna find out that some of our friends are demigods. Like it's so heavily talked about in this book that it doesn't make sense for us to just drop it or to not meet those gods. The Irids show up and save us during a venin battle, and then he tells Andarna like that she can go with him and like learn more about being an Irid, I guess. The one who's talking to her is like her great-great-great-grandfather or something like that. Like they're in the same line, and Violet specifically mentions that their scale pattern and the way their horns are is exactly the same. And all Andarna has ever wanted was to meet her real family, but now that's going to mean breaking the bond with Violet and leaving. And that was incredibly painful because Andarna doesn't want to leave Violet. Like, she loves Violet. She loves Tairn. They are her found family. But at the same time, Violet's like, I don't want you to resent me. Like, the one thing you want in this world is other dragons like you. How can I take that away from you, basically? And so Andarna leaves, and it sucked so bad. And I feel like the bond didn't fully break because the dragon was like, yeah, come hang out with me for a couple of years, like learn how to do this whole dragon thing, grow a little bit, and then you can come back if you want. So I feel like the bond wasn't fully broken because when she comes back later, she can talk into Violet's head and stuff like that. But when she does leave, it does feel like we've broken the bond because Violet is in bed for days on end, like unable to move, depression. And Tairn understands it. She says that it's the most open Tairn has been with her regarding like their power and their ability to communicate and stuff like that. We also find out that Mira, like, she obviously knew that Violet had been sort of dedicated to Dune, and then also she had had a prophecy. Violet's heart was going to cause her to turn. And she was kind of suspicious of the gray at the end of the braid because she thinks that at some point, like, Violet has this deep down seed of being a venin and it's going to cause her to turn or something like that. And then that's when Zaden kind of fesses up to Mira and is like, oh no, like they meant me. Heart, like her love was going to turn. But it wasn't necessarily going to be Violet herself. Which multiple times during this story, I was like, Violet's going to end up being a venin. I feel like that's our next step, almost. There were so many times where she needed more power, she needed to heal, she needed to do something quickly, that I really thought we were headed in that direction. Also, Zaden is training Bodhi to be his replacement as Duke because he does think he's gonna probably die in the next couple months, and Bodhi is pissed off about it. He obviously, like, he doesn't want to become Duke. He doesn't want Zaden to leave. And I feel like Zaden is handling it really, really well and rationally, all things considered. We find out that Theophany has taken Mira, like she delivers one of Tiny's scales, and we're like, oh, we need to go save Mira. We know it's a trap, but obviously we're gonna go do it. And she says that if you want to save Mira, basically, Violet and Bodhi need to show up. And I was confused. If you understand why, could you let me know in the comments? Because I didn't really understand why she wanted Bodhi specifically, unless you're trying to, wipe out the whole Tairn line or something like that, because Zaden's basically like on borrowed time and Bodhi is next up, I guess. And then she also wanted Andarna, and at this point I don't know if she knew that Andarna had left. And then Theophany kills Mira. I genuinely thought that Mira was done for. And I had sort of thought that Mira was going to die at some point in the series. I was like, there's no chance that all three of these kids get out of there, as far as like Mira, Violet, and Brennan. And I also thought that Mira was potentially going to turn on us. Of the three, she seems the most willing, I guess, to sort of, be one for the cause on the opposite side, because she really seemed like it. I feel like she seemed very straight-laced and like rule followery when we met her. But I mean, when she found out that Zaden was a venin, like she wasn't gonna go tell anybody about it, then she was like basically about to die. Thank goodness. Like, I felt poor Violet, and I'm glad we saved Mira. And Sloane had to channel to do it, which obviously Sloane didn't want to do because she's been sort of boycotting her power, but everything turned out fine in that regard. And then at the end of that chapter, we got this note from Violet where she's like, I'm not the best of us, she is. And I was like, who are we talking about right now? Like, I didn't know if she talking about Mira? Was she talking about Andarna? Like, at the end of that chapter, when she's like, I'm not the best of us, I was like, girl, you are the most powerful writer in the entire generation. Who else are we talking about? We also figure out that Theophany is not a lightning wielder. We thought that she was a lightning wielder, just like Violet, but she's not. She's more of like a weather wielder, like her mother. And that she also, like, Theophany doesn't want to be just like a powerful venin. She wants to become a god in her own right. Because Violet's asking her, like, what are you going to do? Like, you just take more and more power. Like, where does that land you? And, when is it ever going to be enough? And it seems like Theophany has really gone off her rocker about becoming a god. Which, first of all, is that even possible? Because that would be a good bridge segue if we're going to meet Dune and the other gods. Like, if we're actually going to have them become characters that we talk to, then being able to become a god by pulling enough power seems like a potential arc for Zaden. We shall see. We lose Quinn. Imogen is there. It is heartbreaking. That is when I started crying during the book. That was like truly, truly horrible. Also, when we meet Theophany, what is her name? I can't even say it. Theo. We meet her and we have that, whatever it is from some location. The names are, it's really late at night at this point while I'm recording. But Violet has this thing from Auric that Theophany can't really touch. And she realizes that Auric gave it to her, and she's like, Auric can tell the future. And I was like, interesting. I don't know if I would have put two and two together in that way, but that's why Violet's the smart one. So, and then we're in Zaden's mind for a little while, and we find out about this person named Brune. Did we meet Brune before? Because it sounds like that's his sage, which I feel like you have to remember the stages of venin that we were talking about. You have to go to, I think you need to be at a certain point past initiate to have a sage, like to be able to be like in the ranks, you have a commander. And so that was my understanding, is that now he has pulled too much power and he is no longer at that point of easy return. It's going to be very difficult to get him back. And we see Zaden using all this power to help with this end battle, because it's really our last chance. Everybody has been cornered. Sgaeyl and Tairn both had the net situation, and it's just not looking good for our squad. And so Zaden pulls an insane amount of power, and I'm like, awesome. He is gonna be at that point where he doesn't want to be healed anymore in the next book. I'm guessing that I feel like as far as him being able to control his power and be around Violet, we got off easy this book, and the next one is going to be when it gets really insanely difficult and Xaden's going to start having all of this self-sacrificial stuff where he's going to try and, I don't know exactly how he's going to get out of it, but he's not going to want to be around Violet. I feel like in this book he kind of had a little bit of that, but overall he sort of gave in to wanting to be with Violet more and like being able to hold himself back. Whereas in the next book I don't think we're going to have that after this whole situation with him pulling power. All right, let's talk about the end. We have arrived. Violet wakes up after this battle. She thinks it's been 5 minutes. It's been 12 hours. She has a wedding ring on her finger that she recognizes. It's a jewel that matches the hilt of one of Xaden's fancy blades. So she and Xaden are married. And she's like, it's not just on a finger. Like, this ring is on the finger. And then we're looking around and we're like, what the heck happened? Then we see the marriage license, essentially. Legal binding marriage in the presence of Dune. And I'm like, what is happening? What is that? That better be Xaden's name on there. It was. Violet's like, I would not have forgotten getting married. When did this happen? Why did we decide to get married? Like, it just seems like such a weird time. And then Imogen made her forget. And Violet's like, why'd you make me forget? And then she's like, I didn't do anything you didn't ask me to do. And I'm like, why? Why would Violet want to forget her getting married? Like, this doesn't make sense at all. Why would she want to forget getting married? What is going on? At the end of this book, I was like, we had no warning. We didn't even get to see them get married. Rebecca, that's a scene I would have liked to have seen. Even if it was a Xaden chapter, and then we see Violet deciding to get... It could have been like a rewind. Maybe that's the beginning of the next book, is like seeing the marriage scene. Because like, why'd they get married? Is being married like a way to help someone stop being a venin? Like, could she... I don't know, is there some sort of bond that Dune could put between them that could help? I don't know. Overall, I feel in much better shape than I felt at the end of Iron Flame when I was a puddle of tears. I'm at least doing a little bit emotionally better this time around. But I'm also just like very confused. We're married to Ven and Zaden, and we don't remember getting married, and we asked to have our mind erased of the marriage. Like, it doesn't make any sense. That's not something Violet would ever want to forget. Even if it went badly, even if it wasn't like their choice or something, like if it came down to like some horrible situation where it was like get married or die, like also she would have wanted that too. So I don't understand what we're doing. I don't know where we are. I don't know who's handling this situation. Ranking. I think I liked this better than Iron Flame, I think. Yeah, I was very annoyed at them as a couple with their conversations and fights and stuff in the last book. I remember being so agitated, and I also didn't like Kat being in the picture. So I think I would say Fourth Wing is still top for me because it is Divergent with dragons. I love Divergent. It's the same story. In my opinion, it's so similar. And then Onyx Storm, and then Iron Flame, because I feel like this book, we got to see a lot more of the world for sure. We got to see a lot more powers. It was less sad to an extent. There was a lot of funny moments in this book too, which was great. So yeah, I don't think it would rank higher than Fourth Wing for me, but solid. I would love to hear all of your thoughts, all of your theories. Please leave comments of, anything, but mostly why we erased our mind after getting married. Like, what is the reason? I don't get it. Do you think Zaden is like full venin at this point? Did he run away and he's trying not to hurt people at this point? Maybe Zaden will just go full force, become a maven, and then take even more power and become a god, the way that Theophanes wants to do. I don't know if I would like that storyline, but it would be interesting and it would make sense because I do feel like, do you think we're going to see the gods? Because I do feel like we're going to see them as actual characters, like supernatural beings that come fight or at least hang out with us. What a time. Do we know when the next one's coming out? I feel so bad for authors because they know that we do this. Like, we read a book in 12 hours and then we're like, okay, next one, please. Fourth Wing, book 4, release date. Okay. It took about 2 years to get from Iron Flame to Onyx Storm, so we're thinking late 2026 or maybe even 2027. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, hold on. Okay, yeah, nobody has an answer. We're just all writing articles with no information in them, so that's great. Yeah, probably, I hope it's like late 2026 because we'll also be getting Sunrise on the Reaping movie. And so that could be a really fun time because I know those fandoms overlap a lot. So that could be a really great time for all of us. If it's like released in like late November or something, that would be wonderful. A lot to look forward to. I will probably be purchasing a hardback at some point. I didn't even want to try the bookstores today because I just feel like they got overran. I knew that a lot of people had like midnight release parties, and because of that, like all the pre-orders and like all the books that they had were going to the midnight release, and I didn't want to go around to a bunch of different bookstores today and just try and find a copy because I feel like they were just going to be gone. So I do plan to get an actual copy at some point though, because even though I read Iron Flame and Fourth Wing, I can't get my arm down. I'm on audiobook. I still bought them as trophies because I do love these covers. That's it from me. Please let me know your thoughts. I'm gonna go have some ice cream or something to cure the emotional wounds. Please like this video if you liked it. Click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. I'll probably try to get a book 4 theories video out at some point. I do love like seeing what y'all think and then discussing. My name's Caitlin. Thanks for watching. Bye.